and he's the champion of regeneration in the North's big city. So it's little surprise that Michael Heseltine is the man the government has turned to help Teesside through its present economic ills. He'll chair a new inward investment initiative to try and find new jobs to replace those that have been lost, most recently, of course, at the Redcar Steelworks and the Bulby Potash mine. But without money or staff, what chance does he actually have of making any real impact? Luke Walton reports.
She may not look like your archetypal steelworker, but Kay Wilson spent 7 years at the Redcar steel plant. She was devastated by its closure, but didn't take long to find temporary office work.
I was really pleased, really relieved, because it's so hard to try and find a job. You don't realise how much time it takes you to be looking for a job as well, filling application forms, doing the internet searches, phoning people up.
Kay says former workmates haven't been so fortunate.
I was very lucky. I've been able to get training and get a job, but a lot are still waiting to hear about training. We're still waiting to hear where this £80 million from the government is going.
The closure of the Redcar steel plant has proved to be just the first wave in a sea of financial troubles engulfing this area. There have also been job losses in the SSI supply chain and redundancies on the horizon at Tartar Steel and down the coast at the Bulby Potash mine. Now the government wants to fill that gap with new employment. So can it turn back the economic tide?
Enter former Deputy PM Lord Heseltine on Teesside earlier in the week in his new role as champion of local inward investment. Determined, he said, to put the area back on track after the bad news of recent weeks.
The only way to get over those problems is to maintain the momentum of growth in the area, to create the new jobs and the new industries and the new opportunities. And if I can play some part in that, it will be a privilege to have done so.
A positive message. So how was it digested at this sandwich shop, a short distance from the Redcar steel plant?
Michael Heseltine's appointment will be judged on his results. If he gets the right results, he'll be a hero in this area. However, why are we looking at foreign investment? This government that we've put in power have money.
People from down south, yeah, they look at us, they know we're having a hard time, but nothing seems to come direct into Redcar. We've never had anything, I can't see us getting anything.
The latest figures show North East unemployment remains the highest in the country at 8.6%, and the number claiming job seekers allowance in the Tees Valley was up on the previous month by more than 800 to over 14,000. Local politicians worry the picture's getting worse.
We know that the full fallout of the SSI workers aren't in those figures yet. We also know that there's been further job cuts since then. Of particular concern to me is the youth unemployment figures in Redcar and Cleveland. They're going back up again. It's a real problem for us.
But there are also bright spots, like this Stockton factory making parts for the car industry and jobs in the process. On top of that, since January, nearly 3,000 new businesses have started up in the Tees Valley. The boss here says it's vital the area builds on that success.
Look at companies like NIFCO, look at companies like Hitachi, look at other companies in the area equally successful, darken up the road and say, well, how are they successful and we're not? Maybe we're in the wrong market, maybe we've got the wrong product. Let's really focus as a region and find out where the business opportunities are.
So is the government doing enough? Challenged by the Middlesbrough MP Andy MacDonald on Wednesday, the Prime Minister insisted it is.
Well, I know how important it is that we all work on behalf of Teesside, not least because of the difficulties that there have been in Redcar, and that's why we have the task force and that's why the additional resources are going in.
But with more steel jobs under threat, local Labour MPs say government words aren't matched by actions.
I would like to see government ministers actually getting off their backside for a change and actually interacting on that to try and save existing capital that we have and existing jobs that we have, never mind trying to attract new investment. What we have at the moment is divestment, existing sites either reducing their workforces or going into liquidation or even worse.
So can the politician they nicknamed Tarzan swing to the rescue, or will he find reviving Teesside a fight too far?
Luke Walton reporting. Well, let's talk now to Paul Booth. He's spent more than 40 years running businesses on Teesside and is currently chair of SABIC UK Petrochemicals. He's now also the head of Tees Valley Unlimited, which is in charge of the new initiative. Paul Booth, and with the high-profile job losses that have been, inevitably all the media coverage has been pretty negative about Teesside recently. Is that a fair reflection, or is that actually masking a much more positive story underneath?
I think, first of all, the job losses are obviously regrettable. And we have a set of actions in place, really, to take care of the short term. So I'm really looking at the medium term and the long term. So if then you look at what is already in the pipeline before the kind of the seismic shocks of SSI, the serious investment of 2.9 billion, the MGT new biomass power station, they add up to something like 5,000 jobs and about £4 billion worth of investment. But they're not here yet. So I think one of the first jobs is to understand how we can accelerate those projects. Look at whether there are planning issues, finance issues, regulatory issues. And I think when we understand where those blockages, where those holdups are, I think Lord Heseltine will be able, hopefully, help us to move those blockages, to accelerate those projects and get them going.
So there may be short-term issues, but you're reasonably hopeful that the medium and long-term, there is a way of replacing the jobs that have been lost.
Well, I believe so, and I think even beyond that, I talked to Lord Heseltine about beyond the projects that are already there, accessing unconventional energy, chemicals to waste. I still haven't given up hope of bringing recycling steel on the Redcar site based on cheap energy. Now, they're all sort of a way off, but actually are very realistic and doable projects that will bring a lot of jobs.
What do you see Lord Heseltine's role here as? Because he doesn't come with a pot of gold, does he?
No, but I think what we have to do is to work very hard collectively to make the business case for these projects that are sitting behind the ones that I've described. And I think when we understand that, there will need to be inward investment from somewhere, whether it's from foreign governments or foreign investors. And I think that the value there will be Lord Heseltine able to facilitate bringing that inward investment in to support those projects.
Briefly, I mean, is there something the government can do that it's not doing at the moment?
Well, I think it's in terms of short term, the 80 million is there to help. I think that the short-term actions around we're putting packages together for retraining, for looking after apprentices, getting people back into work. I think that is not easy to do, and I think that a lot of energy is going into making those things happen sooner rather than later, and government is trying very hard to help us to do that. I think the other thing that they're doing.
Is there something extra they can do?
Well, I think it's back to the point of diversification. We talked about the mega projects, but we're already building a bioeconomy, a digital economy.
So helping with that, basically.
Well, I think
I'm going to have to leave it there.
Okay.
Sorry much. So help with those diversification would be what you need. Okay. Dave Anderson, appointment of someone as high profile as Lord Heseltine, the fact that government money is going in, just to show that actually the government does take it seriously, trying to replace these manufacturing jobs in Teesside.
I would have thought it shows that they're worried that the man who's supposed to be in charge, James Morton, isn't up the job. Lord Heseltine talked about the momentum of growth. Where's the momentum of growth in this part of the world? We talked 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago about developing clean carbon capture and storage, which would have meant a lifeline for the coal industry across this country. And what have we heard this week? The coal industry is history. Now, that would have produced lots of jobs in Teesside, lots of jobs on the Humber, and it's just being let go. We've talked and talked and talked, and nothing's happened.
But isn't that looking backwards, really? Actually,
it's learning from looking backwards.
But, actually, you wouldn't decry a lot of the positive things that are happening on Teesside. If you listen to a lot of Labour MPs, you'd think it was the area was falling apart. It's not, is it?
Richard, I want to be positive. But, I've lived through this. I went through this 30 years ago when the same government deindustrialised this part of the world. And the support we got then was desperately poor. Now, we've built up and we've got back to where we should have been. But over the last 5 years, we've seen nothing other than one agenda, and that's austerity. Paul talked about inward investment. Why don't we invest as a government? We invested £375 billion to save the banks, and yet we won't put the money in to save the steelworks.
Well, let's put this to Robert Goodwill. I'll come to Heseltine in a moment, but what will frustrate people, as Dave Anderson said, is that all this effort to try and create new jobs when you could have actually saved the existing jobs. More effort there, you wouldn't have had to put all this extra money in and bust Lord Heseltine up.
Well, I think we have to look at whether it was a reasonable prospect to carry on that steelworks to a viable future. But we've been through this painful process before with the shipbuilding industry. Steelworks like Concert closed down, and the answer was to bring in new industries, to bring in small businesses that could create jobs as well. And let's not forget the fact that although Bolby are downgrading the size of their mine as they come to the end of their potassium chloride resource, they are going to be mining polyhalite. And just down the coast, of course, York Potash are going to build a new mine. They'll need 1,500 people to develop that mine and 1,000 full-time, long-term jobs in actually mining. So there is, there are prospects of new jobs there.
I appreciate that, but let's turn to Lord Heseltine. Looks a bit like window dressing. He comes up with no staff, no money. I'm not sure he knows what his role is, to be honest with you. Was it just a name to attach to this?
Well, there's an £80 million package there to try and work on getting the skills there, to get the skills there, to work with the local task force to ensure that we can attract in those new jobs.
What extra does Lord Heseltine bring to this?
Well, I think Lord Heseltine is a real heavyweight, and
he was 20 odd years ago, is he now?
He's still doing tremendous work around the country, and I wouldn't agree with the points made about James Wharton. James is a very effective minister. He's from the area. He understands the problems of the area. I think it's great that James Wharton is engaged there. We've got youth and vitality. We've got experience from Lord Heseltine. So I think we've got a good team there to try and deliver that.
Okay.
And we've seen it in the past with the ship industry, with some of the old heavy industries going. New industries are coming. High-tech industries of the future, not necessarily smokestack industries of the past.
Dave Anderson, I mean, this isn't the early 1980s, though, isn't it? Because unemployment is much lower than it was then. So the economy's in a much better state to cope with these kind of shocks.
The economy isn't, but what you got is a low-skill, low-wage economy is what we had in the 1980s. We're going back to that.
Well, I'm not sure Paul, I won't bring you back in, but I'm not sure Paul Booth would agree that that's what's happening on Teesside.
Not on certain sections within Teesside, but in vast sections across the country where you've got zero-hour contracts and people working in insecure jobs, you've got lots of that. But, the point I made before about inward investment, if we'd kept that steelworks going as a government, with government money, me and Robert talked earlier on about HS2 and things like that. So we're going to need hundreds of miles of railway track, for want of a better word. We could have used British Steel to produce British railway tracks.
But that was offering a blank cheque to a company that hadn't made any profit in all the time of its existence.
You take it over as a public company. In the same way as we took over Northern Rock,
I'm sure there's lots of other industries that would have liked that opportunity, but the harsh reality is, that you can't prop up every industry.
Well, actually, you can if you want to. The will's there. Other countries do it. We've been to Stephen Hughes and all the MEPs after him and before him said we could use state aid rules in different ways to support these companies, and we've chosen not to. Okay. My government chose not to in 2009, to be honest with you. We chose not to support the steel industry to the extent we should have in 2009 when we were supporting banks. We should have been supporting the steel industry then. We might not have been here today.
Other countries are adopting the sort of policies that Dave's talking about. They are countries which have lower growth and unemployment spiralling. In this country, we're creating jobs, we're creating growth, and the sort of policies that we're looking at are the sort of policies are delivering both nationally and here in the North East.
OK, Robert Goodwell, Dave Anderson, thanks very much for now. So thanks to Paul Booth as well for talking.